Okay, bro. I'll keep reading for you. So in the last video, we did the first paragraph of page 176, and we talked about, I talked mostly um, about what that meant, what that means to become highly resistant to updating our priors, and what that could mean to, the next, anyway. All right, so then the next sentence was, but the threat to our reputation can be lessened either by affirming a separate group identity or reminding ourselves of our deepest values. So we talked about that as well. All right, but I didn't continue reading, so I'm doing that now. And of course, our reminding ourselves of our deepest values. He hadn't actually really talked about that, so that's what's happening now. In one study in the aftermath of 9/11, scientists brought subjects into. Oh, by the way, for some of you, that's 11/9. But for all of us, that's Inber 11. India 11. I 1 1. B. It's the second day of the week. In one study in the aftermath of 9/11, scientists brought subjects into the lab who strongly supported the war in Iraq. Okay, so subjects coming in, yeah, weapons of mass destruction, gotta save that country and protect ourselves and we gotta do what we gotta do, and it's just so wonderful and cool. Half then completed a self-affirmation study that emphasized the importance of their patriotic values. Oh, we're splitting up in groups of two? Okay. Oh, I'm doing a self-affirmation activity that emphasized the importance of my patriotic values. Scientists asked subjects to recall times when they had lived up to those values. Oh, yeah, I remember one time I had the biggest flag at this thing. Okay. The other half completed a control task that emphasized their sense of humor and creativity. Hey, man, what are we doing here? Okay, yeah, no, we're having fun, blah, blah, blah. Then participants either met experimenters who wore flag pins or experimenters who wore lab coats. Oh, we're all back together. Oh, I'm going over here and I'm meeting this experimenter. He's got this flag pin. I obviously can't see who you. Oh, I shouldn't tell you, but I'm gonna go talk to an experimenter who's got a lab coat. Oh man, well we were in the same group the first time. I guess now we're. Oh, okay. So anyway, each person then read a report critical of the foreign policy of the United States, suggesting the country bore some responsibility for the conditions that had led to the attack. What attack were we talking about? 9/11 or on Iraq? I think we're talking about 9/11, right? Suggesting that the country bore some responsibility for the conditions that had led to the attack. Oh, conditions in the Middle East that, I don't know. Most people rejected the evidence and the arguments, but not those whose core values had been reaffirmed and who felt they were in the midst of fellow patriots. So 1/4 of the people were in both. First they split off into groups, right? Some were like, "Hey, remember, you're patriots," and the other was like, "Hey, let's do arts and crafts," and then, they put everybody together and then split them up in a different way. So now half of the reaffirmed patriots and half of the arts and craft patriots went and saw a patriot researcher. Half of the reaffirmed patriots and half of the art and craft patients went and saw a scientist researcher, and all of them read about how America's foreign policy no good. Okay. So, the half of the reaffirmed group who went and talked to the patriot researcher, when those conditions were met, the subjects reviewed the evidence thoughtfully and without bias. And what that means is that the mechanisms that we're working aren't ones that we would typically consider maladaptive, such as this reputation management one. So they're patriots, or they're talking to another patriot. They've been reminded about their values of patriotism, and they see this flag pin, he's a patriot. So now they're like, okay, really? The United States not good foreign policy, huh? Anybody else Even the guys who the patriots who hadn't been reminded of their patriotism and had the patriot researcher, they weren't convinced. That's interesting. In a follow-up study, scientists divided pro-choice subjects into two groups. One group wrote an essay about how they had made someone feel good, and the other wrote an essay about how they had once hurt someone's feelings. Subjects in both groups were then asked to pretend they were a Democrat legislator who was about to negotiate a new abortion rights bill with a legislator from the opposing party. Subjects who got a chance to affirm they were good people were much more likely to compromise and reach an agreement with their ideological opponent than people who felt their reputations were at stake. All right? So, as I said in the previous video, if you want to change the output, you change the input. Output can be beliefs or behaviors or speech, whatever. If you want to change that, change the input. And so, basically, by the subjects getting the chance to affirm that they were good people, that triggered certain mechanisms, such that then when they're looking at the the negotiation between their representative and the opponent, those "I'm good" mechanisms, well, they were part of the conversation. Whereas they were napping for the other people. They hadn't been woken up. They hadn't been slapped. They weren't part of the input. Was affecting the output. So, with an E, affecting. Okay, so that's pretty cool. It's actually really important, not with an A yet there. Okay. Okay, this is from the chapter, The Truth is Tribal.